The Assassin's Creed series is at a bit of a crossroads, a turning point that could either bring it back into the limelight or really kill it. From where it became its massive powerhouse of a historical franchise to where it is now is almost worlds apart. And with Mirage and Infinity on its way, it seems like there's still a long way to go before Ubisoft's crown and glory becomes anything but the tired franchise it is now. Because there's more Assassin's Creed to come, but it seems like there's a lot of red flags. The early games were what really brought this title or franchise into the mainstream. Historical games had never been front and foremost of the limelight, but Assassin's Creed decided to champion the Renaissance, the medieval times, and even later going down into the ancients. Yet they managed to do it by bringing an incredibly arcadey but beautiful new games with fresh graphics, a third-person stealth style, and of course, most famously, the parkour system that no game has been able to really match since, or I don't think ever will. This is what made the franchise brilliant. Also, chuck in a sprinkling of fun characters in games like Assassin's Creed 2 and Black Flag, and interesting stories and gadgets that you can play around throughout. The game started strong with Desmond, who admittedly had the personality of a wet cardboard box, but it still had solid mechanics and story to back it up. Assassin's Creed 4 was where it really started to change in a big way, adding in ship combat and almost experimenting with new settings and basically a style of Assassin's Creed that didn't have any assassins in it. But then they took it a bit too far. After Black Flag, they kept on going down the same route with Unity and Syndicate, with hits and misses, admittedly, but people still kind of enjoyed where the franchise was. But it wasn't pushing anything, it wasn't changing anything, and it kind of started to get a bit fatiguing for the fans that were in from the start. So then came Origins. Ubisoft wanted to do something particularly different, and boy, did they accomplish that. Good or bad, it really wasn't what had come before. They took the third-person arcadey stealth and made it into, well, pretty much a full RPG, going back to the first Assassins, where the Order came from, and showing us Egypt, an ancient world that hadn't been explored before in the franchise. Following on, they had Odyssey, pushing even more into this RPG aspect, and Valhalla with some, well, questionable misses and a bit of a steer away from the beautiful things that even Origins and Odyssey actually had. Look, I know a lot of people didn't like Valhalla. I actually quite enjoyed it. But this is where the issue comes in. I, for one, think Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla are decent games. They actually have a lot going for them, whether it's beautiful graphics, some fun storylines, some actual cool RPG aspects, and a new combat system that isn't just counter and block. But it's not quite the same. Is it bad? I think there's debate there, but I don't particularly think so. But the newer games just have nothing to do with the original Assassin's Creeds. So fans from the old titles of Revelations and Brotherhood have no reason to be coming back to a franchise that pretty much has no recollection to its original source material. People don't want this kind of thing if they were fans of the early games, and if they were fans of these newer games, well, the majority of the fan base just aren't really here for an RPG. There's other titles for them to tide them out for that kind of thing. So Ubisoft had to do something different. This is their cash cow. They can't just let this go. So was announced Assassin's Creed Infinity, and it kind of shook things up. As Ubisoft tend to do when they start to get desperate, they make a big reach. Sometimes they hit that hold and sometimes they fall to a slump on the floor. Assassin's Creed Infinity isn't even an Assassin's Creed game, but what it was the biggest red flag I've ever seen. An announcement of a new Assassin's Creed Live Hub, a place that you can access every Assassin's Creed game in the past and move between them seamlessly. All the old and the new games that will be coming in the future would all be in one place. Sounds okay, except from the fact that now you're giving a Ubisoft the full monopoly over everything that happens with or outside of their games, which is always, from experience, the breeding ground for live service microtransaction havens. It wouldn't be a surprise, as Ubisoft have dabbled massively in the past, even killing some of its biggest franchises. Not necessarily in numbers, but even titles like Rainbow Six Siege, which have such a loyal community, and games that people love, have been diluted so much with Ubisoft's insistence of making live service and continuing to push games that should probably just have a sequel by now. Assassin's Creed Infinity still has very little information about it, but Mirage is going to be the first game that's going to take full control of that platform. And this is where the red flags start to at least give us some hope. Mirage was announced last year, and it's not going to be the same. The developers have even said that amongst our fans we started to hear the desire for a character-driven story focused on the core pillars of the first Assassin's Creeds on a more intimate scale. This isn't going to be as big as your Origins or Valhalla. We're going back to the Assassin's Creed 2, the Assassin's Creed Revelations of old. With its more condensed scope and clear focus on Basim, who is the lead character, and his coming-of-age story, our main goal with Mirage is to provide total immersion in 9th century Baghdad. They even stated themselves that they know that their bigger games are getting tiresome, that they really tried to switch things out. It worked for Origins and people kind of liked something fresh, but now the same old RPGs being churned out in different time eras, I think is getting stale, even with their attempt to shift the genre. So heading back seems like a good idea, at least at first. I think Mirage could be a big success, and in fact I think it's almost guaranteed. Every time a company tries to come out saying they're self-aware that their most recent games have not been successful and then bringing out a callback to its origins, players are on board because it's an exciting thing, a big hint of nostalgia that sucks players back into their childhood. Mirage is going to sell like hotcakes, especially on a smaller scale. It's almost a win-win for Ubisoft. They don't have to tackle such large games, and still they can bring back its core fan base. However, nostalgia is only temporary and it will not last forever. If Mirage is what they say it's going to be, and a hark back to the original games but still trying to focus in on core characters, good gameplay and real stories, it could be a hit. And of course, a follow-up would be the next path that Ubisoft have to take. But if they just go back to what Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed Unity were, games that had really good merits and were pretty well received, but really kind of shallow, this is going to be a short-lived victory. Yet it seems like Ubisoft is all in. Ubisoft has cancelled a ton of games recently, some that even weren't announced. And less than 2 months out from launch, they admitted that they were absorbing more developers to try and move into the title. From the cancelled games that they had, now moving on to Mirage, it seems like they are doing the Battlefield and Call of Duty thing, getting everybody to focus on one title and hoping it's going to be a hit. Okay, Battlefield 2042 was a disaster, and that's kind of screwed dice, but maybe Ubisoft could make it work. At least we could hope. I think there's still a lot of life left in this franchise, but something has to happen soon, and it has to happen fast, because Assassin's Creed still is a bit of a red flag.